So today we're going to be taking a look at using the pen tool in Adobe Illustrator to help create out or replicate a track design that I found off the internet. I can bring in an image by going over to the project, finding a source. I can right click on the image and hit copy image so that I can look to paste it onto Adobe Illustrator. If I hit Command or Control V, it pastes it onto the image. That way I can use it as a reference. If I do want to drop down the opacity so it doesn't become too much of a distraction, I go over to my transparency panel, reduce this down to 50 or 30, 40%, just so it's a little bit downplayed and I can look to draw out the lines. Once I have it, I can lock the layer as well. If I want to lock it, I can go to Object, down to Lock and Selection. Now that it's locked, I can't move it. It won't become a distraction or interfere with me drawing out lines. With the pen tool does take some getting used to. If I want to draw a straight line, it's very easy. I can click a point, move to a new area, and click another point. Understand that the foreground color and the fill color and the stroke should be modified before you begin, but you can always modify it while you're working as well. Currently, I have a fill color. I don't want to have a fill color as I'm filling in shapes. And then for my stroke, right now I have a black, but I am going to look to increase the size of this brush by going over to my stroke panel and adjusting the weight so it's a little bit heavier and easier to see. So again, with the pen tool, it's very easy to click a point, move to a new area, click a point, and if I want to end the line, I can hit Escape on my keyboard or Enter to both end the line. But if we want to get into creating out a curved line, it's a matter of starting out with the point that you have and then moving your cursor to a new area. I'm not holding down on the mouse, but I'm going to click and drag to create a bent line. And you can see that as I drag it upward, it's going to bend the line downward. So it's going in the inverse. If I bring the line downward, it's going to bend the line upward. And when I do release with the mouse, you're going to see that it does extend another curve off of this curved line that we created. I can either continue with the curve, or, so if I want to continue the curve, I just move to a new area, click a point, and we see that curve continue. Or if I hit Command or Control Z to step back, rather than maintaining the curve, I can click on the last anchor point I just made and then go into creating out a straight line. And I can do a combination of curved and straight lines to build out what I'm trying to create. You can see as I extend from it, we're automatically getting a curve because the last line we did was a curve. If I click on this anchor point, cut it off, I can go back again into the straight line. Or if I'm clicking and dragging, I can allow myself to see if a curve is going to work and adjust that curve to be something more. If I want to click and drag, modify, it's a matter of patience, getting used to how the bend of the line is going to work, and then moving to a new area to adjust and see if that curve can hold up to what you're trying to replicate or create. But I'm going to end it there. If I want to take this out, very easy, I can hit backspace or delete to cut that area out. Now with the image that we have currently, we have a couple straight lines, but we do have a lot of curved lines to work with. If we're going for a basic trace and overview of the design, with the pen tool, I'm going to look to start out in a straight area just to keep it relatively easy, and I'm going to follow the middle of the track that I already have picked out. Understanding where to put anchor points takes some time to get used to, but what I can look to break up any of these curves is to do my best to just break it in half so I can match the curve to the layout. Once I get a curve, I can look to continue that line, or again, for my preference, I like to cut off the anchor so I can look to click and drag and make my own curve. We get into another straight. Again, I want to stay towards the middle of the area. If it's not lining up, just click on the anchor point and then get back to maintaining a curve or a straight line where needed, or click and drag to create the curve to match to the shape and the design you have. It's just a matter of taking your time, clicking and dragging to replicate, match the curve that you're looking for, and I'll go around this whole shape to make sure it is accurate as possible. If again, I do want to modify this, understand, be careful that your smart guides are going to be on currently. If I do want to turn my smart guides off, I can go to view at the top navigation and uncheck smart guides. Now I have a little bit more freedom of where I'm clicking to make sure that the lines are matching up to what I want. So again, it is a tedious process, but I can cut off the handle or the anchor and look to click and drag to match to the track. If there's a subtle curve, just take your time to get and match the curve as best possible. If we have a straight, I can end on the anchor point to draw out the straight before I get into my next curve. Again, this is tedious, but it will help you get more comfortable with the pen tool as we continue on. So once I get to the straight, I click on the anchor point, look to maintain a straight line down this path, and then get it into the bend where it starts to bend around. If you need smaller lines, just click and drag with a smaller anchor point or area between the anchor points until you get more comfortable matching it to the design. Do the long straight, and then getting into closing out the mat. Once I have the overall shape, or if I need to modify any elements, I can always get into adjusting with the direct selection tool, the white arrow. If I want to modify some handles, I can click on one of the anchor points and look to adjust the handles as needed. If there are certain anchor points that you need to modify, we can look at rounding out anchors. So looking at the anchor, I can see this little circle up here. This will allow me to smooth out this edge, so I'm matching better to the shape. But once we have this black line, I'm relatively just trying to get the shape correct. That's the most important part for this assignment. Once I get the shape, I can look to simply break it down into simple areas, adjusting the weight of the stroke so that it is covering up the track. So for myself, I'm going up to 36, depending on what you're trying to draw. It may be something different. But once I have this now filled out with black, maybe if I want to get into adding the lines that the cars would be racing, I can look to use the pen tool again. Or if I do want to maintain this black weight for the stroke, I can go up to Object, top navigation, and expand to turn this into a true object. This automatically becomes one object. Just be careful of any indents, any discrepancies on the line. I can modify a handle to smooth this out, just so we're not having any issues. But again, I can go back up to Object, Expand, and click OK, and it'll turn this into a solid object. Once I have the curves, now I can think about maybe adding in details to give the sense that this is a race. I can go back to the pen tool, and I can use my pen tool to draw out lines. matching to the curve of the track as best possible. Again, as I'm drawing, you can see that it starts to filling it with black. I just need to invert and change the color of the stroke so I can get something a little bit more vibrant. But this helps drawing with the pen tool to give a smooth line that is going to maintain consistency around the track. If I need to undo, Command or Control Z. Match the bend as best possible before you get into the next straight. But I'm going to end the line right there just to get a sense of how this is going to work. I can hit Escape to end the line. Once I have the line, if I do need to do any modification, if I feel like the lines are a little bit wonky, I can always select the line, go over to either the Smooth tool, left side navigation. With the Smooth tool, I can look to click and drag down the line to try cleaning up the line where it's breaking. Make sure to select on the line first, and then click and drag through the Smooth tool to smooth it out. Once I do have this line, I can look to select it if I want to add some thickness to the stroke, modify the stroke as needed. But once I have this stroke, now I'm going to look to possibly play with duplicates and getting smaller versions inside the shape. I go up to test out if the offset path can work, where I can go up to Object, down to Path, Offset Path. With this, I'm only looking for a line on the inside. So I'm going to look to select on the offset and adjust the thickness so that the line is appearing on the inside of the track. Because I do not have a closed object, it is creating out an enclosure on the outside of the shape. And if I do want to make any modifications, I can always select on the areas that I don't want. Just hit backspace to delete them out. If I want to select out multiple points, I can hold down Shift on my keyboard, click on each point. That's unnecessary. And again, backspace, so it's no longer part of the scene. If I decided that I wanted to shorten up or modify these lines in any way, I can select on the line that I want to modify. If I want to change out the color to make it something different, or get into adding in anchor points so that your line is coming across as a separate piece or entity. I go over to the direct selection tool, click on the anchor point that I want, and hit backspace, cutting off that element, making it appear as if the red is in the lead if it's going in this direction. I can always look to try adjusting as well if I want to hold down Shift and try to scale it out. But if I want consistency, it's best to use offset path to get accuracy on the line. But if I do want to modify the red again, I'm going to select it, go back up to Object, Path, and Offset Path. With the offset path, I am going to increase the size of the measurement so we're getting a third line. And click OK, and then use the direct selection tool to delete out anchors that I do not want. And click and drag from the open space to select out multiple a little bit faster as well. And again, I'm going to change the color just so it stands out a little bit better. If I did want to break this up or have the orange leading, I can always add onto a line as well. But we can see how we're getting variations on the strokes while maintaining to this track concept so that it looks clean, professional, yet accurate to the design. There can always be modifications made, but we're just looking for the basics of understanding how this can work. If I do want to end this, I could also consider going over to my stroke panel and maybe adjusting my arrowheads. So to give a lead or give an explanation that this subject is in the lead, I can add in a circular anchor point and adjusting the scale of that point. We can make it smaller, bigger, just so it is signifying that the car is going in this direction, that this point is being over here for a specific reason. We can also play with arrangement of different profiles. If I wanted to have the stroke go from thinner to thick, or from thinner to thick, or vice versa, I can reverse it on this stroke so that this red is fading into the back. And the same thing with the green and orange. Click on the drop down to change out the arrow format. For my green, I just have to switch the direction so that the dot is appearing on the opposite side, and then can get into modifying the scale. And again, if I don't like the weights of the orange and green, I can look to modify the uniform to show a variation. The green works as is, but the orange does need to be flipped, so I can reverse it so that the orange is streaking in the beginning. This gives more of a tail off of the path that the cars are taking while showing where they came from. It's allowing us to understand that the closer point, where the points are, is where the cars are in at that moment, giving us a real sense of the path and the progress of the cars throughout the race. Once I'm done, if I want to hide out the map that I originally used, I can go over to the layers panel over on the right side navigation, click on the drop down. I can take a look for that locked layer, in which I can hide that layer just so it's out of the way completely. Or we can always unlock it, click on the map, and simply backspace and delete it out. So I hope this helped, and I hope you enjoy. Continue your skills working in Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and come back anytime. Have a great day.